Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Vennessa McConkey. I started off my career in engineering and operations management, and then went into all the hiring, then took a sabbatical and decided, what am I going to do? Or try to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and went into resume writing and thought, you know what? This could be a full out business. This was about 13, 14 years ago. And it just evolves. I had so many people in corporate coming to my office asking me all kinds of questions that were not related to their job outside wanting to look for their job. So I got involved pretty hefty in a lot of the hiring practices and whatnot in our organizations, and decided I could do this on my own. And since then it's evolved into career coaching. And then just over the past couple of years, it's more so I noticed a lot, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, is you have the candidates who are looking and they're like, I have these sets of qualifications I want, I need, I'm good at. And then you have the companies who also have that. They get to post theirs. Well, I guess thanks to Monster and Indeed, you have the candidates who gets to post that stuff as well, and LinkedIn now. But a lot of times they don't match, and they're trying to communicate, and there's just this gap in between. And I was like, you know what? I am going to attack that gap and help bridge that gap, not necessarily in a recruiter sense, but kind of in a recruiter sense. But I sit there and say, I'm not going to give a company a candidate unless I have primed them and prepped them and they know exactly what they want, and they're not trying to fit themselves into a job description box. Because how many times do candidates tailor and tweak their resume for this posting and that posting? And I'm like, you know what? You are Sarah Green, and who in the world should change who Sarah Green is just because there's a posting? You are who you are. If you match some of those things, let's go for it. Otherwise, let's not even attack that. And then you've got the company who's going, I just had to let go a regulatory director because we had an FDA finding and it was their fault and whatever, but I can't post that. But I need someone to fill this role because I'm supposed to have a regulatory director over all these people. I just am going to put on the job description what the last one was and add a couple things. And that's about it. And it just, there's this mismatch. And so my goal has been over the years to bridge that gap and say, hey, company X over here, what is it that you truly need and that you want? And what does a successful person look like in those roles? Not just they've got this title, they've had this type of experience. No, what does success look like? And can this person match that success? And then candidates, do you like them? And then company, do you like them? Type thing, and bridge that gap.
I love that. So how did you come across that? Because I know with the resume writing, it was funny because I started doing career coaching when I first went out on my own, and people started sending me resumes, and I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. So like, that's a special skill. That's a special talent. And not only that, you have to like doing it. You know what I mean? And so the fact that you like doing it, I'm super excited that I know someone that I can share. Because that's just something that it was too, I think, tedious for me to kind of enjoy. I loved career coaching, but the resume writing was something else for me. So how did you find that gap? What happened that you were able to kind of bridge that gap, between the resume and the candidate and the business, the company?
No, that's a great question. So I think a lot of it came after I had kids, is because we build up our kids, we teach them things. They each have their own skills and talents and their own experiences, their own perspectives, their point of views on life, right? I have 3 boys, and they're in the same home and they get the same rules, and the personalities and their perspective, it is massively different, right? And that's great because they need to go out in the world and be able to use that. Same thing as with candidates. They have all these, I work a lot now with mid to senior level candidates, and they have decades of experience. You can't really portray wisdom on a resume. And unfortunately, as you know, it's like, I wish they would get rid of resumes, because all it's doing is, here's a list of, it's a history book is all it is. And I don't know, I don't like reading history books. Right? I don't enjoy that. That's not exciting to me. And so I did not like, yes, I still update resumes. We make sure they get through to who they need to. I'm not a big proponent of going and applying to jobs because you've got so many with the AI and you've got so many it's disappointing with how they are screened these days. It's very upsetting as how it's screened. And I've actually had HR professionals say, you know what, we've gotten 400 applicants and I got through 60 of them and I found a couple that I really like. And then the rest, you could have had number 5 be your actual one that you needed to hire. And you did not go through all of them. Mm-hmm. Now the ATS system is great for screening out people who really should not be applying. Absolutely. For some of the basics, you have to have. Yes, if I'm hiring someone in, operations at a clinical place or a doctor of orthopedics, I need them to have certain degrees and certifications, right? Surgical, whatever, I need them to. But everything else, if you're not screening for that, or if you're screening people out, if they don't have those degrees and really they have the experience and you can't portray, because a lot of times, as you know, with the resumes, you can't really tell people what you've done. You can't tell a story, right? How many candidates I've said, okay, well, tell me a story about what you did. And they'll go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And they're like, but how do I put that into a resume? How do I get someone's attention in that manner? Gone are the days where we could walk into a facility and say, you have these problems, I can solve them. Let's go to lunch. Let's talk about it. We have to do it all remotely. So going back to the original question is, I couldn't just send the candidates off and be like, okay, yeah, here's some tips and go apply and go reach out and that's it. Because so many of them over the last few years were coming back so disappointed, going, I'm trying, I'm doing all the things. They go into depression, after COVID. COVID was great. Now you could apply, you could get a job immediately, right? And then everyone became a career coach and health coach, right? Everyone did, right? I mean, easy. Then now we're getting the trickle effects. And what's happening is people are like, well, how do I talk to people? And we're losing that skill set too. And so it's helping these people have that skill set to, how do we communicate with someone? Let's pick up the phone and actually call someone, but I can't find their phone number. What if you have been out of a job for 3-4 months and you're like, I was already living paycheck to paycheck. Why wouldn't you exhaust all of your options?
Right.
Instead of just relying on what's on the internet out there. Pick up your phone, call businesses, right? The yellow pages, remember those? Right? You didn't know who was going to pick up the phone. You didn't know what position they had. You just hoped the secretary would send you to the right person, right? So I didn't feel comfortable just sending them out there because it's like mama hen saying, good luck, have fun. No, I was like, no, I'm going to care for you like that. And part of that caring for was prepping the companies too and saying, hey, do you have the right hiring practices? What is your hiring process like? Are you so busy that you are depending solely on the applicant tracking system and AI bots to do your interviews and all that type of stuff? Or are you actually, where does the human hit in your process? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hire an intern to go through the other 340 candidates that you didn't like or didn't get to and have them do the work while you're doing the interview process. Mm-hmm. So that I just didn't feel comfortable and just caring so much for my clients. I mean, a lot of my clients have come back and they're more of not necessarily friends, but just like really good business colleagues as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you're taking that extra step, right? You're doing a lot more than a career coach would do. You're being that bridge to kind of get them in the door. And I love that. I think that's a service that, not many career coaches offer. And I think I really appreciate that.
They're scared because even recruiters are like, I don't like dealing with candidates. I don't even like dealing with companies, right? Because everyone everyone's in this mode of the company's like, I'm desperate. I know I need someone. It's a big risk out there because I don't know what I'm getting, because there's so much dishonesty out there. Even as you know, from like looking at resumes, they're like, okay, add this on there. And I'm like, well, is that true? Well, yes, part of it is, please put truth on there. Right. And it's so, and then you've got the candidate they're at a risk too. They're like, well, I know I need to make this amount of money and I should make a little bit more, but now the company's not wanting to pay. How do I get them to pay? It's a whole mess.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And then not even like a lot of companies don't put their salary in the job posting, right? So that was a question that I always had my recruiters ask, up front, what are you looking to make? This position pays X to Y. And what are you looking to make? Are you in that? Because that's a total waste of time, of everybody's time, right? Yep. If it's not, in that range.
Well, it's really important too to make sure those job postings are accurate and someone has mined through them. Like I said earlier, they take what was the last job posting, last person's responsibilities, and just add to it. One of my favorite one has been lately. I mean, it's been on there for a long time, but on most of them, if you look, must have good oral and written communication skills. What does that mean? And how do you measure that? I know I'm succeeding at having good oral communication skills. How do I put that on my resume? Right? What has everyone done in the past? Great communication skills. Again, what does that mean? Right. So if the company's not clear, that always makes me nervous. Why do I want one of my babies, my candidates, right, going over there when they are not clear on what they're doing?
Very
and what they want
and why what they're being measured by.
Yeah. And companies get mad when I ask that question. I'm like, you measure all these other things. You have all these other KPIs. Why wouldn't you take your KPIs for your quarterly, your annual, all that stuff, and directly relate it to this role so that people know what they're getting into?
Yeah.
It never made sense to me. But the companies who do get it are the ones who get the great candidates and are able to pay because they know what their ROI is. That's something that I've been doing over the past year, is not just, helping someone with their resume and making sure it's all par there and their LinkedIn profile, but giving them an ROI summary. So it's kind of an in-between document. It could be a cover letter too, but you're offering services to an organization. They're buying services. What are they getting in return? What have other companies got because they purchased your services? If they're spending $150,000, $200,000 a year on you, what are they getting? Right. That's something the resume can kind of tell, but this is like, this is what this person, Kelly, is good at. This is what industry she performs well in. This is the return she's gotten in these areas. Like, I'm a big proponent of doing like more of functional resumes too, and those kind of line up. It's a company is hiring for a skill set and a set of wisdom and judgment and risk takers. No longer are they saying, hey, you know what? You worked at Google. We need you. You were at Microsoft. You were at Amazon, whatever it was. Those don't carry much weight anymore. Or even, you got a degree at Harvard. Does it matter anymore? I mean, we all have degrees. I got mine up on my wall, right? It's like we have them. But it's now, what can you do with it? I like to talk about 3 R's. You have your results, which everyone's pretty darn good at displaying. Then you have, do your results, are they relevant now? I mean, I used Lotus Notes and I know how to run a fax machine, but those are not relevant now. Right? I could put, I'm proficient in MS Office, right? But that is no longer relevant. Even Google Drive stuff, it's no longer relevant, right? How is that, again, relating as a candidate too? You have to relate. Does that relate to that company's goals? If not, you take it off, right? And then how does it resonate with them? So a company also has a story. So you have a story and you have to make them remember your story by being relevant with your results. And so a lot of people miss that. And And the companies on the same thing. They have to do the same thing. They've had a specific set of results and they want a specific set of results. Now, how can they make that stuff relevant for candidates today? And how can they show a story around it so people are memorable? Memorable. You can remember them, right? It's like sitting around a campfire. We remember those stories.
Mm-hmm.
People, we forget that. How did any kind of experiences or information or wisdom get passed down? Through stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need to get back to, because people want to relate to people. And if, I don't know about you, but I've looked at probably about 100 resumes already this week. I don't remember any of the data facts.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is and I can speak to this is accurate. The average resume it takes 5 to 7 seconds to review it. So until you have to get your story across in 5 to 7 seconds to show that you're at least qualified for the position.
Yep.
And so how do you do that for your clients, or how do you work with your clients to do that?
To make them qualified. So a lot of times what I have them do is what I call break the pattern cycle. So, right, like you and me, we look at all these resumes, you're so exhausted with looking at the same thing over and over. Anytime I've posted roles, you'll get 300 applicants and they all look the same. Mm-hmm. So how you can have that pattern interrupt for the person who is reviewing? And it's, okay, you can apply. I always use the 80-20 rule. Play the lottery 20% and go apply to the jobs and see what you get. Okay. Mm-hmm. 80%, as we know, is like the hidden market. It's building relationships. It's looking to see what companies you want to work for, whether they have a posting available or not. That is the most important thing. Seeing what challenges that company has at that moment that they're dealing with, what growth stage they're in. And if they have the funds, if they're publicly traded, right, you can look and see what kind of funds they would have to support your role that you want to be in. And so the cool thing about AI is you can use that and gather research very quickly on a company and then make sure it's verified, of course, too. But I like to use Claude for that. You say, hey, you know what, this company over here, I don't know, Nike, right? What challenges are they experiencing right now in Q2 to Q3 2026? And what growth stage are they in? Right? You think about it, if you want to be in a mature company, okay, have at it. If you want to be in a startup, you're not going to want to, if they're in a mature stage, you're not going to be happy there. So you have to understand that too. What projects might they be working on? You can ask, AI these questions, and then you can go and find the people who are working on those projects or might be working on those projects at that company and start reaching out to them and telling a story about what you've done and what your 30, 60, 90-day plan would be. Mm-hmm. Not if, when. I always tell people when you get hired there. Mm-hmm. Because always no, when you get hired there. You mm-hmm. act as if, because if you truly want to work there, you're going to do everything you possibly can to annoy the junk out of them, just like we were talking prior to this. It's a sales thing. Mm-hmm. Keep asking, keep planning out basically your pipeline, how you're contacting them, when you're contacting them, how often, until they basically tell you to go screw off, delete you, block you, whatever. Mm-hmm. There is no rule for how many times you can apply or reach out to a person. As long as you're reaching out honestly, genuinely, and with value, then one day they're going to reach back out. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had potential companies and I'm like, okay, I've got a great candidate for you. I've got like all this stuff. I know your problems. This is what you're dealing with, all these things. And they're like, no, not right now. No, right now. Months later, they come back and go, oh, because I'll send them things of value, or, hey, you know what? When this person, when they work for you, this is what they're planning to do. I'd love to give you more information, but we need to have a conversation first on the phone. Mm-hmm. And get them off the social media, whatever it is, right? Get them off and out of the messages, out of the email, get them on the phone. Because then you have more access to them. You're staying top of the line. You can text them, you can call them, you can email them. You have multiple avenues you can reach out to them. Mm-hmm. And at the worst case, you can say, you know what? Do you know any other companies? Are your vendors? This is the one thing that people miss too, is they miss looking at vendors and suppliers of the last companies they worked at and the ones they're looking at working for, because that's also an in.
Very true.
You don't necessarily have to work for Amazon, but who are their suppliers?
Yeah. Yeah, very true. That's a very valid point.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So we talked about you wrote an article recently about passive candidates, and before the call we were chatting a little bit, and I when I was reading it, because I having been in recruiting for all of my career as part of HR, but also like most recently I was really focused just on recruiting, and realizing how much now being on my own, it's sales. It's the same, right? So passive candidates are just like my passive clients, right? The clients that aren't really looking for me, but could really use me. So talk to me about passive candidates and what, I think it was 70% is what I saw in the article, right? Of candidates are passive and they're not really looking for roles, but how do you appeal to them, or how would you recommend a recruiter or a company find candidates that may be the best, most qualified, but aren't necessarily applying?
I mean, you know that the most opportune time to look for a job is when you have one, right? Most people, unfortunately, are not happy with the roles that they're in some capacity. It could be they're just dealing with a lot of toxicity. They're just dealing with a bad boss. They've got processes they're unable to change and have the authority to do anything about. And so passive candidates, the way I find them is I'm a big proponent of Sales Navigator on LinkedIn. Okay, it's a really good, useful tool. You don't have to use it, but if you're looking, you can, or you can use, Sales Recruiter or whatever. You can go in there and you can say, hey, you know what? My niche is in manufacturing. I'm going to go look for the director of operations at manufacturing companies. And then you just pull up maybe in a certain area. Maybe you want to look in, you're on the East Coast, and you want to look in the Boston area. You start just niching down in there and filtering out. And not filtering out, it was ironic, right? But filtering down, right? Who you want to look for. Then I usually, again, do the same thing that I ask candidates to do. I say, okay, I go into like Claude or wherever and say, they're working at this company. What challenges might they be experiencing? Are they publicly held? What's their growth stage? All that type of stuff. And then what projects might they be working on? Have they been recently acquired? What's happening? Are they investment owned? Are they PE backed? All that type of stuff. And then I can go in and educate through the education and the knowledge that I have, go in and, intelligently go, okay, Mr. Director of Operations, I know that you guys are dealing probably with this situation. You guys just got acquired by this company. There's probably a lot of structural issues right now, blah, blah, blah. I would love to learn more about what you're dealing with right now. Are you in a stage of you're growing? Are you in a stage of, you're looking for your own next role because maybe you're frustrated, or are you looking for your next best candidates on your team? And that gives them an option. And most of the time they come back, you know what, I'm decently satisfied, but I'm always keeping my options open. Because that is at that level, that VP, director, senior executive level, they are keeping their options open. They typically don't stay at companies for more than 3 years right now.
I was going to say, 2 to 3 years.
Exactly. Because they're hired to go in and manage a situation, get the right leaders in place, and then they're like, okay, they get bored very quickly, and then they want to move on to another organization. They can do the same thing. That's what builds their confidence there too. So they're incredibly passive, and they're not going to be ones who are like, I've got the open to work banner up there. Look at me, look at me, look at me. They're most of the time they're on LinkedIn, but they're not posting. They're not commenting. They're not any of that stuff. You have to reach out to them in a way that they're actually going to want to respond. You have to put yourself in their shoes. They already have a job. They're busy. They're trying to manage all the playground chaos that's going on, right? You got all the whining, complaining that they're dealing with, all that. You have to be enticing enough to make them want to respond. Just like, for example, I was doing the search, just like I had said, for clients, and I actually had the founder of Monster.com reach out to me and say, hey, boom. You were talking to someone that I know, and they wanted me actually to reach out to you, right? So neither of them are looking for anything, but they have other things in mind. And because I actually reached out, and I genuinely do it, it's not for me any kind of financial gain. It's here. I have something you might be interested in. or I'm genuinely curious about what you do and what your company is about, because maybe I will have a candidate in the future. Maybe I can work with you on processes. We have a big car wash company out here, and I sat down with the COO a couple months ago, and he's like, we have internal recruiters. I don't need that. We're not really hiring, but you're good at processes in the hiring. So we're going to do an internal audit, and I'm going to let you know my findings. And then I'm going to have you help and then see if you can have someone come in and do the same thing that you can do, and I can hire them on. Right. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't reach out and say, hey, I know you may not be looking. I know your company might be struggling with this. Go from there. And then they build trust too. Because even when we sat down at the local coffee shop with this guy, he's like, you know what? I literally just told you everything I would never tell anyone. Because you made it comfortable enough to trust you. Yeah. That's what it was about. Yeah. And that builds a relationship, and every once in a while I'll sit there and I'll message him, or I'll text him, or I'll call him and be like, hey, what's going on? Did you guys fix this finding? What's your plan of action? What are you guys going to do? And so when you have that relationship, when they actually need you, then they will reach out and you will be top of mind.
Yes. Yeah. How often do you find that you have to touch them?
In that case, we've gotten to the point where it's every 2 weeks. Yeah. That's about where it's at right now, because again, they have their own roles, their things that they're managing and whatnot, but don't just reach out and say, hey, how you doing? Yeah. Have kind of value. Like, I know he's got a couple of daughters and it's summertime, they're on break. So they went on vacation a couple of weeks ago. Hey, how's your vacation? Now also what's going on at work? Yeah. So it's engaging both ends of it to show that you're human, and you don't just care about I want to play I want to work with you. I want, whatever it is. We have to look at both from the candidate end and the company end, and being a recruiter, we all know we want what's for us. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? You have to make it about the other party. Right?
What's in it for them?
Yeah. Recruiters obviously are getting paid if they place the candidate, and candidates are like, do this for me, do this for me, do this for me. I want, because at that point they don't have any financial skin in the game other than what they're losing by not having a job. Right. Or not having the best one that they want. The recruiter's working their butt off, but you have to have skin in the game, and you have to, speak accordingly to the recruiter. You have to give them very clear answers. Very clear. This is where that communication, which is what I giggled about earlier. It's like good written and oral communication skills. Show them in this manner. And the same thing with the company too. You have to work nicely with them. I did a talk yesterday on the $127,000 candidate, and it was talking about how companies are losing money every quarter. They're losing 3 figures of money every quarter by not getting their hiring stuff under control. And they have people at the company who are covering for that role. They have mistakes that are happening. They're spending time, as an HR professional. You're like, I have my job, and now I have to work on hiring at the same time. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, money to put up a posting, right, and manage that. You have to be very clear on what you're looking for, what you want, when you want it. Otherwise, you're going to be losing out on money.
And just wasting so much time. I know I used to struggle with hiring managers not making the hiring a priority. So, I would try to push it and push it and push it. And it was just like, I'm not available this week for interviews. Next week, let's get some interviews on, and it's like the longer you have that position empty, and it's one of those things because you're reacting to everything that's coming, right? And it's one of those things that you realize, if I would just fix this, then these things might slow down a little bit, or these things will become better able to handle. But it's just, it's a process, and it's a cycle, sadly.
Yeah, it's managing your resources accordingly. It's managing your time. And it's not easy. I mean, I remember being a director of operations, and you're like, oh my goodness, Mondays, please don't book anything on a Monday. Please do not, because there's always a bunch of fires. And by 4:00, I'm finally breathing, right? But you have to know that. And then you have to say, okay, I know I need this person, and I need to make time, and then tell HR, hey, these are the times, not just one day a week, because that's not going to work.
Mhm.
That's going to frustrate them and the candidates, right? And it's going to just extend the process. Set a few times during the week it is a booked out meeting. You cannot change it. And that is when you can do your interviews or whatever HR needs for that role.
Yeah. And I think too, the candidate experience, right? We don't talk enough about that. And I think that was always important to me as a talent acquisition leader, is we had a system. It was funny. It was shown to me like in the very beginning when I was with the company, and I don't think anybody ever used it aside from me. I mean, across the globe, right? Because they called something the same title, and I was like, oh, we already have that. And I went into it, and they're like, oh, we didn't know we had that. And it always rated candidate experience and candidate satisfaction. Like even the people that would apply and maybe get a phone screen and then not move forward with, like we still rated, we asked them, like surveyed them, asked them how things, were and what they thought, because it was important. And ultimately a candidate could ultimately be a customer,
Yeah.
So,
so important, back right before COVID hit, there was a senior talent acquisition friend of mine and me. We were like, you know what, this candidate experience thing, this ghosting, right? Everyone's like, oh my gosh, ghosting is new. It's not. It's been going on for decades, right? On both ends, all three ends, right? Candidate, recruiter, company. It happens, okay. And we actually started creating a platform, and then COVID hit and everyone went haywire, right? No one knew what was going on, but we started creating a platform of the candidate experience anonymously. So you could go in and rate every step of a company's process. So if Nike had, 6 steps, they could go in and basically Google star it, right? Here, this one sucks, this one is good, this one is good. So it would show the candidate experience. And then our goal was to be able to say, hey, you know what? Companies, Nike, if you want this information to improve your process, we will work with you and we will give it to you for a price, right? Type thing. And that the goal is to be able to improve that on all the ends, and then it would be like, hey, this one has a recruiter. Did you, had listed a bunch of questions about the recruiter. Were they good? Were they not? Was it, if it was an internal, if it was someone that was a headhunter, type thing. And it was really, really good until, like I said, COVID hit. And then we kind of did some different things beforehand, because recruiters, let's just say it as it is, there is no school that they graduate from.
Right.
It's just whatever experience they have. They're like, hey, I was at a barbecue and someone said I'd be good at this. Here I am. And there aren't really that many good ones out there. Just like talent acquisition at an organization, you have to really care about people and the process and that experience, because like you said, that candidate, even if they didn't get hired, could be a customer or was a customer. And now they're like, yep, no. I tell this to companies all the time. If your hiring process sucks, that means your other processes in your organization suck. This is the first view that a person gets of your organization, and it should be your best.
Yeah. Very true.
Absolute best. It is the first view. And if you can't get that right, and if it's not good and you're not constantly auditing it, there's going to be some massive issues. So I applaud you for that, for you being, even though you're the only one, right, going through it.
Well, me and my team, because I always brought it up to my team, and would share the feedback that we got. And for the most part, whenever I looked at like us compared to the other groups, we were always higher, and probably because we were making that a priority. But yeah, it was a great piece of software, honestly, that was introduced to me. And then I would look at it maybe once a month, maybe once every couple months, just to kind of keep my finger on it. But yeah, it was a really cool system. So how about if we have candidate experience and recruiter experience and company experience, right? There was a time where we had high turnover, right, of new hires, and everybody looked at recruiting, right? Yeah, and it was so frustrating because it was like, it's not us, but also like whenever they come into the company, like they did a pre-hire training, then they did a post-hire training, and then they went to the floor, and it was, they did the pre-hire, they did the post-hire, but they get to the floor and it's nothing like what any of the trainings were to begin with, right? And how do you recommend that be handled? Because recruiters tend to get a lot of flack in that area. And I don't think it's necessarily a recruiter's fault.
No, it's not. This is when I worked in corporate. Like I said, I was in operations and engineering. I'd started off as an engineer and worked in operations because I was one of those few engineers that said, hey, so I might be in manufacturing over here, but like quality is a part of this, and R&D is a part of this, and accounting is a part of this, and materials is a part of this, and even HR is a part of this because we had unions and to deal with all that. And so I would go, and my boss loved to hate me half the time. And I went with them with multiple companies because I would go sit in their departments for a week, customer service, returns, all of that stuff. And so I would sit with them and go, okay, what are you guys feeding into me? What do you need from my departments? And understand that. So, the reason I did that is because it's the internal customer experience too that matters. So yes, we get a big book, at least back then, right? We got a big book of like reading through all the policies and procedures, and this is your onboarding, and which never happens. Onboarding never happens. And you go out to your department, and it's nothing like what they said. It is fighting fires. I don't care what department you're in all the time. And the way to improve that is to I always tell people when they're doing their 30, 60, 90, when they're presenting that, right, even before they get hired, is to say the first 30 days, I am going in and I am working and sitting down with the cross-functional departments that feed into and out of my department. I want to understand and I want to hear it from people before I even present any solutions. A lot of times what happens is we go in, we're hired for a role, and then they're like, okay, you need to solve this now.
Yeah.
And you're not understanding the story. This is where I go back to the 3 R's. It's like, you have the results, great. But now again, you need to make them relevant to that company now you're at. And you need to make it resonate. And they have their own resonating story that they need to tell you, but you have to be open to hear that story. And so for them to take notes and do all that and not present anything in terms of results, in terms of process improvements, whatever it may be, until the end of that 30 days. And then you say, okay, now we're going to get a small win. And then we're going to get another small win. And then we're going to get another small win. And it's going to turn into all of these small wins that are going to equal bigger wins for the organization, because now I have gained trust with all the people in those departments, and everyone's not working as a silo anymore. They're working together, because then that goes back to the whole hiring process. When you've got someone who's working in materials, you've got someone, in supply chain, you've got someone who's working over here in operations, someone in accounting, in finance, and they say, oh, we all need to come in on this hiring process. And hey, finance is like, no, this person, not going to work. Or yes, you guys say no, but this person has some good financial acumen and we need them and they have great wisdom, right? So you have to have all of that combined, and that helps make that hiring process at the beginning easier and better. And people are going to want to work there because of it.
Yeah. And I think you just described so many companies with the silos, right? Because the silos exist and they're really hard to break down sometimes. Yes. And when you're hiring, whenever I would be hiring for my team, I was always looking for, as you mentioned, there's a lot of things in those job descriptions or not in those job descriptions that you're looking for, right? My team, I would always look at what our weaknesses were, where were our areas of opportunity, and I wanted those to be the strengths of the next hire, right? Because then that's how you're building a good team, and you're fitting a puzzle together, really. So it's, the job descriptions are great, but they're a guideline, right? They're not necessarily the end all be all or what they're even looking for.
Yeah, unless you're in a union shop, then they hold that hostage, right?
Very true.
It's not in my job description. I can't do it. You're like, oh gosh, right?
Yeah. Or don't you even try to carry that box, because this is my job description.
Yeah, that's it, right? Yeah, I remember this. I have stories about those, but it is really important is to say it's a guideline, because we all, that's like, I'm Christian and I follow the Bible, and it's like, it's a guideline. It's not going to tell me every single thing for every single, circumstance and situation that I'm ever going to be in. It's a guideline of basically, how am I supposed to act? What am I supposed to be doing? What are my roles and responsibilities but there's going to be so many things underneath that. I don't know how many times I've said it to my kids. I'm like, I wish there was something in this book that would tell me exactly what to do, because right now I don't know what to do, right? But if you slow down and you hire someone who has that knowledge and wisdom, is able to get through the chaos. I mean, there was many times we had health situations in the middle of our shop floors. We had heart attacks. We had fires. We had all that type of stuff. And you had to have people we had FDA walk in and we're like, oh, hi, like, what did we do? And you have 48 hours to get everything situated and set. You have to be able to calmly react. But how do you do that? How do you hire someone from a resume? You can't, that's why you have to have stories set. You have to approach the hiring process differently. And the same thing with companies too. One of my favorite interviews I ever went on was with a
Go to our neighbor's nest ball.
Yeah. They lasted 45 minutes. But you have, where was I even at?
One of the favorite companies you ever went in an interview on?
Interview that I didn't want to go on because I'd never done interviews, and I just walked into companies, like I said, and I've always created my own roles. But it was one of my favorite bosses, and it was for that recruiting guy that I worked with too. And he's like, just go on this interview. And I'm like, come on, man. He's like, it's the end of your workday. Who cares if you get hired? Yay me, and yay you, I guess. But I'm like, I don't need a job right now. I'm happy with the one I'm at. I'm fine. So I was one of those passive candidates that didn't know I quite needed something different. And I went in and I sat down, and the hiring manager who was looking for this engineer was like, I don't care about your resume. I said, good, because I don't think I've even done anything with it. I told him flat out, I'm not looking for anything. He goes, okay, fine. Just humor me. I have this problem with one of my pieces of equipment and it's affecting these processes. Just tell me what you would do. And I think that was one of the best ones because it showed how I was thinking. Mm-hmm. And I really think that companies need to go back to that. And since I worked at that company, that's what we instituted. Every interview and any hiring manager, any cross-functional manager that was interviewing, we made them ask those types of questions because it showed us how that candidate thought. And if they started regurgitating their resume, we're like, nope. Yeah. Nope. I don't want someone who spouts out data. I don't want that. Mm-hmm. I can read for myself. Mm-hmm. I don't need that. When we're in a chaotic situation and we're in an emergency or whatever it may be, I need someone who can think critically and I need to see how they think. Mm-hmm. And it's very important. So I think companies really do need to get back to that.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of interviews are behavioral questions, which I think are great, but I think you need the behavioral, but you also need a mix of those types of questions. Like, tell me how you would handle this situation. And because then you can see how they think and you can see if they're capable or not, right? That tells everything.
Well, I do that to companies as well. It's like, okay, so if you have an employee and this is what the situation is and this is how they're acting, what do you do? Mm-hmm. Most of the time they're just like, oh, I'll put them on a PIP. And I'm like, no. Mm-hmm. What's that gonna do? Right. Let's give the, child that doesn't care and doesn't give a crap, let's give them a PIP and see what they do. They're not going to do anything, or that's their key to be like, I'm going to start looking, and then you're going to lose them. Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do? Are your managers trained to be able to handle that? Is it their personality? A lot of times there was times at organizations where like, hey, you know what? I don't think this person, they're a great employee, but they're not doing well in this role. Maybe they should be in a different role. Mm-hmm. And we had to do that. We had to say, hey, you know what, Angelo, he should not be over here. He should be over here in planning instead. He's really struggling over here. And let's see how he does. Let's try it out for a couple of weeks. And he'd excel.
Yeah. Because the chances are, if someone is not succeeding in a role, they recognize it probably before you do. And they're not happy in it. Mm-hmm. They're not happy either. But I think giving them an opportunity to move to an area that better utilizes their skills is a great way for a company to show flexibility, empathy, and also that people are valuable assets, regardless if, they may not be valuable over here, but they're going to be great over here, So I think that's
managers role too, because if you've got an employee who is not doing well in that role and it's not their best skill sets, they're not utilizing their skill set in the right role, it's a struggle on you then as their manager, because you have to report on it too. So make your life a little bit easier by putting them in the right role, recognizing it, taking the time instead of fighting fires. Like I said earlier, schedule a time for like the hiring, schedule a time to be reviewing your employees too and your processes and saying, okay, does Billy over here, he seems to be struggling lately. Let me see what's going on. Maybe something personal is going on, right? Maybe he was doing well. Let's see what is personally going on, right? Let's talk to HR and see if it's kosher, right? Because sometimes there's some situations, right? And then let's kind of ask him some questions to see if maybe he would be better over here. Hey, can you work on a project with Melanie over here in accounting? And maybe Excel's over there and you're like, oh man, right? Now.
And you're giving them the growth and the opportunity to learn other things.
Yep. And a lot of people don't understand too. I mean, I think they know it, but they don't really know it, is when you build a great internal organization, your hiring costs go way down. You don't have that high turnover because you are building up your company. And then guess what? You have better internal referrals because they're like, oh my goodness, you have to work here. You have to work here. You have to work here. And then as the company is growing and you're expanding, you're going to need more people. Absolutely. But you can ask them first, and then you can move them up into higher level roles and bring in people that they know, like, and trust. And that builds such a great organization. It really does.
Very true. Very true. Well, this has been great, Vennessa. Thank you so much for taking the time. Do you have anything else you want to chat about? Do you have anything coming up that you want people to be aware of or anything like that? Or maybe even if how somebody gets a hold of you and if they like what they're feeling when they know they should call you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. What they're feeling, they're depressed. they're not confident, right? They're getting frustrated with their job search. If you're a company, getting frustrated maybe with any of the recruiters that you're dealing with and not finding the role. I tell people, I'm like, if you've been looking for a role for over 2 months and you're not getting what you want, you need to reach out because there's something that's going on. There's a gap, something that's missing. But yeah, you can find me. I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. I'm working harder to be here on Substack too, but that's where, unfortunately the LinkedIn people is where it's at. And so I have an hour strategy call that I would have for companies and for candidates that we sit and work through your specific process, what you're doing, what you're struggling with, and really get your positioning right for both the company and the candidate when you're reaching out so we can bridge that gap.
I love that. I love the idea of the hour strategy call. I think that's a great tool and just opportunity for people to pick your brain. So.
Yeah, pretty much. Because they reach out, they're like, can I pick your brain? I'm like, let's do this where we're on video, where we're sitting here and going through, because there's times where I've had people say, I'm having a hard time doing interview on camera. How do I do this? We do a mock interview for that strategy call, and that's fine, right? So it's different for each person. And people ask me, like, do you have a specific process? I'm like, well, it depends on what you're doing, what you're looking for, who you are, your personality, where you're struggling, and that's what we walk through.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This was great, and it was great just to hear your perspective on things. So I want to keep in touch, so we'll make sure to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Vennessa. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.